The Auburn Tigers take part in history this weekend.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. We're dapping it up with the Darrell Dapprich, Montgomery radio legend, on this Friday edition of the show. Darrell, the day before the massive, historic showdown between number 1 Auburn and number 2 Alabama in Tuscaloosa. Still shocking to me. Somehow the first time number 1 and number 2 have played in SEC play in basketball history. It's astounding. We'll get to our picks. We'll get to how Auburn can come back with a win. But to me, like, a lot of this focus goes on to the magnitude of this moment is going to be big. No question about it. But Janai, Broom, Chad Baker, Mazar, like, what kind of game do you get out of them in the biggest game of the season? To me, that's my biggest question.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions. I think as the week has gone on, the anticipation and the absolute totality of how big this is starting to build, and even you can just feel it. And I know that it's been very rare that Auburn and Alabama have played in sport. It's happened a few times where the hype and the buildup. This is strange, but when I moved here in 1989, this feels like historically when it was the first game at Jordan-Hare. Alabama was ranked number 1 or 2. So that buildup was just the anticipation because you knew something big was about to happen. And although I tried to downplay this at the beginning of the week, it started to take on a life of its own and be incredibly big. And really, as far as the attention and the exposure, both teams are going to be really benefit from this. So yes, in games like this, Zach, your best players have to show up. It's not going to be a supporting cast game. If Alabama wants to win this game, Nelson and Sears have to play well. If Auburn wants to win, Broom and Chad Baker Mazar need to play well. So, I mean, it's just a matter of that being that simple.
Yeah, and both these teams have played in a lot of big games this year. Both these teams are battle tested. Both these teams are deep. Both these teams are talented. It's been tough to win on the road. Auburn hasn't lost on the road yet in conference play. So I'm curious to see how that plays a factor. And Auburn's been competitive even when Alabama had the better team. They've been competitive in Tuscaloosa over the last few seasons. It's just they haven't really been able to close consistently. Does that change this weekend? If it does, I mean, you talk about making a statement. I mean, you can't make a larger one than what's in front of you this weekend.
Well, I mean, I think you make a good point. I think the fact that the last 3 times they've played in Coleman, Auburn won a few years ago with that Jabari Smith team and that, Walker Kessler.
Right.
And then you have the team that Alabama's best team up until the time they went to the Final Four with Brandon Miller and everybody. And Auburn had that game won, and it went into overtime on the road. Auburn played really well 2 years ago. Last year, 4 or 5 point games. So Auburn's 1-2 the last 3, but could be 2-1. They've played pretty well at Coleman, and they've played really well, as we know, on the road this year in the SEC. That's why I'm feeling better about this basketball game as the week goes on.
You are feeling better as the week goes on.
Yeah, I think that, my prediction might not have changed in my pick, but how the probability has risen of Auburn being able to win this game, because I think out of the last 4 years, even that Jabari Smith, Walker Kessler team, I think this is Auburn's best team in the last 4 years. I do. I think from a totality standpoint, Auburn's guards are much better.
This is the best Auburn team ever.
Johni Broome, as great as Jabari Smith was, Johni Broome's better. And the guard play is unbelievably better. So, yeah, I mean, if they were able to do that, now this Alabama team perhaps is better than that team 4 years ago. But look, they've been on a high. I mean, Alabama's been playing extremely well. They are, to me, it's like Auburn was playing at this level until January, And now Alabama's taken that mantle, and now they're the hottest team in the state. Even though Auburn's number one and has only lost one game, Alabama had some games
in conference play.
Conference play. And Alabama lost some games like Oregon, Purdue, the loss to Ole Miss. So, and they were playing a little uneven basketball. Now they've got it; they're firing on all cylinders. And Auburn's the one that lost to Florida and had a few games they've had a hard time closing out. So, is that going to continue? Can the law of averages catches up? Is it sustainable? We'll see.
Yeah, I made the comment when we did the show reacting to the Florida loss. And I said, this loss almost makes me feel better when they head to Tuscaloosa. And it doesn't almost. It does make me feel better now. Like if Auburn was undefeated, I would say, like, man, there's just so much pressure on the Auburn Tigers right now. And now it almost seems like, everything I've seen is like picking, and we don't have a line yet as we record this, but everyone I've talked to, like in the college basketball world, like is expecting Alabama to win this game. Like, I don't think there's any pressure on Auburn at this point, other than like, what comes in the territory of like being a team that can compete for a national championship, right? Like there's always going to be an inherent pressure there, but I just don't think that many people that follow college basketball high level are really expecting Auburn to win tomorrow.
Which is strange that they're the number one team in the country, but the fact that they're playing number two on the road tilts that. And so, typically when you're number one in the country, you're the hunted, you got a bullseye on your back. I think I love the fact that Alabama got ranked number one in the coaches poll. That was good. That's good for Auburn. That's good for Auburn to see that and say, oh, well, they're number one in the coaches poll and use that. The fact that most, I would tell you this, in December, even when Auburn was on that heater and playing really, really well, I bet you could find a lot of college basketball experts that still would have predicted Alabama to win this game in Tuscaloosa and then Auburn to win the game in Neville Arena because they felt like they were that close as far as talent and overall production. So,
I feel like I've been saying it for months, Darrell, saying like, I'm not picking this Auburn team to lose except for the game in Tuscaloosa. Like, I think I've said that since like conference play started.
But I also don't think we thought they were going to be 21-2 or whatever they are. You know what I'm saying? To this point in the season, I think when the non-conference schedule was so brutal, I thought I could look through the SEC games and the schedule and be, okay, here's one. I get that. Mm-hmm. But as they continue to win, it just kind of changes that dynamic a little bit. And I think that, again, with lesser teams and Alabama, you can make the argument all you want. Alabama's number two in the country. I still feel like from a talent standpoint, the Brandon Miller team was better from a talent standpoint. Auburn did not have the kind of talent they have this year, and they went toe-to-toe and could have won that game and went to overtime. So, yeah. We'll see. Look, there's no doubt, though, that Auburn being number one changes this as far as the focus and what Alabama's going to, it's good. There's no doubt you're going to get Alabama's best game because of where Auburn's ranked and the historical nature of this. And I just think there's a part of this that's very exciting, but there's also a part of this that's a little bit unfortunate because there is a faction of college basketball fans and analysts and media that think this game is like the be-all and end-all. And people need to understand, don't treat it that way. It's phenomenal. It's historic. The winner gets a bump in the driver's seat for winning the conference. And I don't think losing it doesn't end the world.
I do think if this situation would have happened before either team had a recent NCAA tournament run, I do think I would feel different about it. But let's say one team sweeps the other team this offseason or this season. So, whether Auburn or Bama wins this one and then the same team wins it in the regular season finale. But one team's playing in the Elite Eight and the other one's not. Like, who really cares at that point? But this is part of the path to getting to that point is you got to prove that you can elevate and you're fighting for that number one overall seed. There's a lot that goes into it. But this is more than just, what's going to happen tomorrow.
But again, people need to keep perspective that it's great. It's historical. Let's embrace that. Let's get in the moment. And then when the moment's over, it doesn't have to be fatal. if you lose the game. You're a game out.
And same if you win it. Like
right, you're not penciling yourself
into
to the Final Four.
Right. You've still got a long way to go. So we'll see. It's historic. What does Auburn need to do to come back with a win? To me, it starts and ends with Janai Broome. Darrell, we'll get your thoughts on that in just a second, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at Factor. If you're looking to optimize your nutrition this year, Factor makes eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, ready to eat. I've actually got a Factor meal left in my refrigerator downstairs. Darrell, you've used Factor as well. You get them. You can set your menu through a really easy-to-use app. They also have a website. You just throw it in there. It takes 2 minutes, and your food is ready to rock and roll.
You can specify what kind of diet you want to use too. High protein, low fat, low calorie, keto. There's a lot of different things you can do to tailor-made what kind of diet or what kind of nutrition plan you want to use.
Yeah. Big fan of Factor. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/lockedoncollege. 50 off. Use the code. It's all one word, no spaces. Locked on College, 50 off. Locked on College, 50OFF to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. Locked on College, 50OFF to get 50% off and free shipping on that first box. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. I don't want to oversimplify this, but if Auburn wants to come back with a win, it's Johni Broome. We saw him take over games against every other top team in college basketball. We've seen him have a stretch where he took over the game against Houston, took over the game against Iowa State, took over the game against North Carolina. Not as impressive as we once thought, but still at the time we thought that was a big deal. Even against Duke, he had a stretch there. Ended up not being enough, but still, like, this is a guy that we've seen him do it against top opponents and top talent. If Auburn wants to come home with a win, Johni Broome has to play significantly better than he has his last 2 times out.
Not only on the scoring side, but on the rebounding side. He's getting out-rebounded too much. So, from an individual standpoint, absolutely. From a team standpoint, something that's very interesting to me that just stands out when you stack these resumes side by side. Alabama's got the more proficient offense points per game. Yep. Auburn's defense is better points per game. I was shocked when I saw that Auburn was shooting threes at a better percentage than Alabama was. But the two bugaboos or the two flaws or the two Alabama is out, they're rebounding now the way it is, out rebounding Auburn. Auburn doing a lot better job on the turnover. So that to me is the key of the game. Who you can force to do what they do poorly more frequently. Auburn's either going to have to rebound a lot better than they have the last few games, or if they're very comparable to Alabama, they better get Alabama to turn it over to 2-1 pace. If that happens from a team statistic standpoint, that's great. So Broome fits into that equation by he's going to have to get some boards. I mean, he's going to have to get 12, 13 rebounds, I think, for Auburn to have a chance. You cannot get slaughtered on the boards if you're Auburn and think you're going to win this basketball game. Yeah,
and we saw them get whooped on the boards against the Vandy team that played small a big chunk of the night. And Alabama's way bigger than Vandy, way more athletic, just overall better.
Yeah.
And if that happens, it will not be a pretty game. It will be extremely lopsided. If Auburn rebounds with the same attention to detail, the same level of intensity as they did against Vanderbilt, this game will not be close if that happens.
See, I think this game comes down to whoever gets more possessions. I think possessions are going to be very crucial in this game because of how both teams play. And to gain possession of the basketball, you either better rebound and not give second, third chances, because that counts really as a possession, or if you turn somebody over, Zach, you're getting more possessions. I think at the end of the night, if we look at the team that has a better shooting attempts, has more possessions, and you also got to be careful. Alabama gets this reputation of being deadly from the three-point line, but my God, they go to the free throw line a lot. And you can't, if you're Auburn, you can't go to the line 8 times and let Alabama go to the line 22. That's going to be fatal too. So there's a lot of different components, and rebounding keeps that from happening. turning them over gives you more possessions. It's a numbers game. If you get 10 more possessions than somebody, and even if you only shoot 40%, you get 4 more baskets that way, right? I mean, it's the math.
Sure.
So there's a lot of little games within the game. Broom is going to be key, and Chad Baker-Mazar is going to be key. He has been on a milk carton the last 2 or 3 games, disappeared. That's got to stop. He's got to show up big time Saturday.
Yeah, and we can say, he's been battling through some injuries or whatever, and like that might be the case. Sure, I don't think they're being dishonest, but to me it looks mental with Chad Baker-Mazar. And I said this somewhere, may have been on Village Vice with Brad, I don't remember, but I think with the type of player Chad Baker-Mazar is, with how emotional and how passionate he is, I think the overall environment and electricity that Coleman's going to have Saturday, I think it's either going to wake him up or it's going to make it worse. I don't think there's any in between.
Man, that's a great point. This is the kind of atmosphere and the kind of rivalry where the emotions are at their peak. And you either feed off that or it's a monster and it eats you. If you allow it to get in your head and you get out of focus and you get out of your game because you're too worried about chirping with fans or rivalries, it can absolutely throw you off your game. If you feed off of it and allow it to fuel you and you play at a higher level because of it, that's exactly what needs to happen. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think Broom, Chad Baker-Mazar, and Miles Kelly are going to bounce back from. I don't care that Broom got 17 points, still a subpar performance against Vanderbilt. He only had 8 with 5 minutes left to go in the game. Right. So I think you'll see him. And then
similar thing against Florida too. Like he was played terrible against Florida, but he made that 3 with a few minutes left. And it's like, okay, all right. He scored 18, I think. It's like, didn't really feel like it. The impact of that 18 wasn't what we're used to, for sure.
Denver Jones is going to be, you talk about Broom, but Denver Jones is going to be, in my opinion, one of the most important players on the floor for 2 reasons.
You haven't mentioned the wing yet that I think is most important. And that's Tahad Pettiford.
Yeah, I just expect him
I
expect him to come off the bench and make an impact. I'm thinking more along the lines of somebody that's going to have to guard for 30 minutes too. And why I was referring to Denver is, they'll put him on Sears. And Denver's just got to take care of the basketball, be efficient scoring. He doesn't have to score 21 if he scores 10, but he's got to take care of the basketball, and he has to do a good job limiting Sears. Remember, KD Johnson had Sears in hell last year in Auburn. Right. And that was a big, big deal. Sears is going to throw his head back, and he's going to draw contact and all that, and you have to be smart. If Denver Jones can limit Sears to 12 to 14 points, and Nelson doesn't go, volcanic, then Auburn's got a great chance. Chance.
Who wins? How many points are scored? We take a stab at that next, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. Darrell, can you imagine wagering anywhere other than with our friends at FanDuel? No.
Could not do it.
No, can't do it. Won't do it. FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss opening tip, they'll still have plenty of things for you to live bet on. You can even do it by the halftime. You feel a comeback coming, you can definitely get in on the action there. And also they got futures. If you want to head over to Auburn football's page on the FanDuel Sportsbook, they are a 1.5 point favorite at Baylor to open the season. So if you feel like that line's going to scoot one way or the other, you can bet accordingly. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your one shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA, and of course, the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Darrell Dapprich, I do think Auburn drops this game. I do think they lose their second SEC game of the season and their third overall game this year. I think it's going to be, I think it'll be close. I'm thinking like 80 to 76, somewhere along that. If Bama scores a lot more north of 80, I have a hard time seeing Auburn stick to their pace and their style of play, because Bama wants this to be into the mid to high 80s, into the 90s. And if Auburn lets them do that, I think that's going to be bad.
Yeah, this is one of those games that when we do live shows and we predict the next 5, what Auburn's record's going to be, I always have, hey, we're sympathetic. We are buddies today.
Well, how about that?
My throat was a little bit. So I would have had this as a loss, but I will say this.
Okay.
Auburn playing this game is one of those where Alabama's playing at a very high level. They're playing in Coleman. So, yeah, I'm going to pick Alabama just based upon the fact where until they show me that they're about to take a little dip or have one of those games that they're off, you have to show me that first because they're riding high. That, Auburn being number 1, that place is going to be rocking. I pick Alabama to win, okay? I'm going to say similar to you, I think it's going to be in the 80s. But I would not be shocked. I'm picking Alabama to win, and I'm not waffling. I'm saying somewhere around 86, 83, 86, 82, somewhere in there. Yeah. But if Auburn did win this game, it wouldn't be like it would be mind-blowing to me. It wouldn't shock me if Auburn found a way late to win this game. And if they do, it's going to be based upon playing at a high level of defense where they have to keep Alabama within check, and Auburn's capable of doing that. They haven't done it. Well, Vanderbilt, they play pretty good defense against Vanderbilt, except for that stretch, that middle 20. But I'll pick Alabama to win just based upon where both teams are right now, and that I've been saying 4-1, 4-1, 4-1 for the next 5 games. But I wouldn't be shocked. And as this week goes on, there's a belief there that it wouldn't surprise me if Auburn won. And again, is it truly an upset? That's the weird part about this is that
we're having to record this due to our schedules like before a line is dropped by our friends at FanDuel. So I'm genuinely curious, like who everybody keeps quoting a futures bet of like Auburn by 4.5, but I'm like I can't imagine Auburn's gonna be favored by 4.5, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong by the time that drops. But to me, I agree with you. Like if Auburn, like I'm not writing this off as an Auburn loss. I think the way I felt all season that they're going to split these, that Auburn's going to win one and Bama's going to win one. And the most logical, I think the most likely of all the scenarios is they go 1-1 and the home teams win. Like I don't think it's going to be the way
it's going to be the way it is going forward. It's going to be, it's the last 5 years, because neither program has been way up and the other one way down. They've been one's been better than the other in the last 5 years. The 2019 and the 2021 team for Auburn was better, or 22. Even that Auburn team that didn't get to go to the NCAA tournament was better than Alabama that year. But then Alabama comes back with 2 years where they're better, including the COVID year and then the Brandon Miller year and all that. Yeah. So because they're so close to not being the gap being so far, a split is like the natural thing and that's how it used to be, ironically, with Duke and North Carolina. You in Chapel Hill and the Dean Dome, they're like North Carolina would get picked to win. In Cameron, Duke would get picked to win. So enjoy it, state of Alabama basketball fans. That's kind of where we are right now in this rivalry. And I made the argument on a show a couple days ago out of Mobile that people can talk all they want about the high watermark of the SEC and how great the SEC, unprecedented how they are in basketball right now. Okay, even Jay Billis said he's never seen anything like it. Well, the SEC in the past, Zach, has had really good teams, Kentucky teams, Florida teams. It's never been like it is right now. And I say, and I propose, that's because Alabama and Auburn are where they are right now.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like Tennessee and Florida and Kentucky have always kind of been up there, and now you add Auburn and Alabama that have
What's
risen
the difference?
to the top.
What's the difference? Why is the conference so great and wasn't at this level 4 or 5 years ago? You look no further than what the Alabama and Auburn basketball programs have done. And it is like a boat, man. The water raises and that boat rises. That's what's happened with the conference.
What do you think about all of these, I guess, coaches and now commentators like saying, well, the SEC is only 500 in conference play?
I think that's really, I can't imagine how stupid you have to be to make that comment and be a
What is going on?
And Carl Ravitch walking that back and just not being genuine and saying, oh, it was tongue in cheek, and that's bull crap. It wasn't tongue in cheek. That's the second person that's fallen into that trap. I mean, just do a little research. I mean, people make mistakes. I make them. I've spelled guys' names wrong. I've said things, but we come back and we own it.
Yeah.
And we own it. We say everyone's human. But when someone else has made that mistake and then you piggyback on it 2 weeks later, because it was the Miller guy, Sean Miller's brother, that said Archie and said, SEC so tough. They're only 500. And I'm going, that's
like, let's have a brain. Let's think for a second.
And then Carl Ravitch doing it.
Him doing it is more surprising.
Mark Pope yesterday. I'm fast becoming a big Mark Pope fan. Sat at his press conference at Kentucky, and they were asking him questions, and he got deadpan serious. He goes, listen, I got to just tell you guys, first of all, my disappointment before we talk about anything else. I am so disappointed in this conference that we can't find a way to get above 500. He's like, it's really disappointing. And it was, everyone laughed, and he said it. I mean, it was great. It was great.
I haven't seen that clip.
Yeah, you need to see that clip at his press conference.
It's just Thursday. Like everyone outside of the conference just hates the SEC so much. Well, they just hate us so much, and they're looking for anything. And they just like, there's arguments against the SEC, but strength of their basketball programs right now is not one of them. It's
the analogy of the rest of the conferences always looked at SEC football and they were jealous and they looked at it longingly and said, oh, I hate them. And now they have basketball. It's like looking at somebody with money and they're really, really rich. And, oh, by the way, they get the supermodel like Tom Brady on their arm too. So they're doubly upset. They're doubly angry because it was like the ACC thought, well, we always have basketball. Danny Cannell is in hell right now. Because he is an absolute. Someone needs to check on him, because that was the motive. The Big 12 was really good in basketball even before they made this expansion. Because you had Kansas and Texas and Oklahoma and Baylor. Well, now the SEC is king in basketball too, and for all those other conferences that hated them for being the football dominance. But here's the thing, Zach. Let's just be honest. I know people don't want to talk about the sub-revenue sports. In baseball and softball, the SEC has come around
close.
And it used to be
close.
The Pac-10 used to run baseball and softball. I'm sorry, I was a part of it. I know it 10 years ago. It was like all championships, World Series. And now the SEC is like, oh, yeah, you know what? I think we'll start taking softball seriously and let's start winning National College World Series.
Yeah, I mean, Omaha every year, it looks like it's pretty much Hoover, the SEC championship, and then, add 2 or 3 other schools. Yeah, it's...
Yep.
So sorry, but like if that many people are just like trying to find something and they're digging and digging and digging just to find something against you, like you're probably doing something right. Hats off to Commissioner Sankey for the job that he has done leading the SEC this way. Darrell, how can people check out everything that you've got going on?
Follow me on XDAP6410, Instagram, Darrell Dapp. I'm with you on Wednesdays and Fridays, and then we'll obviously go live tomorrow right after the big duel. So we'll check it out.
Be sure you're subscribed. We will go live as soon as the clock hits zeros, no matter what the outcome is. Please like the video, and we'll see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.